This is the OTB Television Network, a service of Capital District Off-Track Betting.
And a very good morning, race fans. Loose on the lead, solo today as advertised. Seth Merrow laid up with a little illness, and we wish Seth, who I assume is watching from bed or from couch. Good morning, Seth. Don't do this to me again. As much as I do it to you, being here alone is not the same. But we'll try to keep you entertained and informed for the next hour. We've got actually, I think, a lot to cover and some nice guests, including later in the show, in the second half, the New York Thoroughbred Horsemen Association candidates for president, the current president, of course, two-term incumbent Rick Violette, and then Terry Finley as well from West Point Thoroughbreds, and the NYTHA election, which will go official December 1st, ballots went out last week, has become quite a cause celeb, as it were. And we'll talk about it with the two candidates, specifically as opposed to some of the extraneous elements to the election. We'll talk about the issues at hand, what faces New York owners and horsemen and the collective interests of racing in New York with the two candidates. We'll also visit with Dave Grenig, and Dave will join us after the first break. We'll talk to Dave about what went on at Breeders' Cup. Of course, was out there with Dave all week leading up to last weekend. Breeders' Cup will get plenty of attention here this morning, undoubtedly, with the controversy that really just continues to at least simmer. It has died down quite a bit since Saturday's Classic, but there are some elements of leaving the race order standing. There's some elements of it that have really, I think, created some good conversation about interpretations of the rules, the difference in jurisdictions, the way that stewards handle the rules and the interpretation of them. And then one topic that seemingly is coming to a head out of the Breeders' Cup, and that is the seeming insignificance of talking to the jockeys after incidents. What exactly is the need to talk to them? And that question coming up more and more in light of things like language barriers, as well as situations like Mike Smith faced talking to the stewards about what transpired with Martin Garcia and Bayern and he and Shared Belief. Mike Smith rides a lot for Bob Baffert. Think he was going to get on the phone and scream and howl? And the answer is no, he's not. Not in that setting. And the thing that has come out of this most uniformly has been, why are we talking to the jockeys? What possible need is there? And the hope that stewards in the stand, they understand the race flow and the circumstances well enough without any added input from the jocks. And particularly when you get, for instance, somebody whose first language is English versus somebody whose first language isn't. What do you have in that circumstance? You've got a guy that is going to try to explain in broken English to the stewards what he was trying to do. The well-spoken English as first language jock is going to win that discussion every time. And that's something that really seems to be across the board an area of this post-Breeders' Cup discussion that could really affect some change. And it does seem that there's kind of a galvanized interest in that regard. So we'll talk to Dave and get his impressions. We'll also get his take on the Belmont fall season. The numbers came out. They were off about 10%. Some of it certainly understandable with 40 less races on the turf versus the previous year. A net of 40 races came off the grass. And that's going to hurt you every time in terms of field size, in terms of the handle. So we'll get some take from Dave Grenig, and we'll also talk about what lies ahead at Aqueduct, now well underway. In fact, a carryover today. And from what I understand, I think the 5th race is off the turf. Everything else remains on. And of course, yesterday, the Long Island Handicap. We can talk about those results as well as Ag Marin gets an elusive win in the Long Island. Chris Clement has sent her out there 3 years in a row, and 3rd time the charm for her. So we'll talk to Grenig. We'll also visit in a couple of minutes, just in about 5 minutes after we go over some news topics, going to talk to Travis Stone. And of course, Travis, the Tupper Lake native, who is now full-time at Monmouth, and after a nice career established at Louisiana Downs, he makes his NYRA debut today. It came out last week while he was the PA announcer behind Trevor Denman at Breeders' Cup. It came out that Travis is going to spend the winter in New York as John Imbrial's backup. And it's got to be a very special day for Travis, whose long-term goal, very well known, is to work in New York, to call the races at Aqueduct, Belmont, and Saratoga. And this is the start of his NYRA career, as it were. And we'll see, of course, what happens as things progress. Larry Colmus, of course, will pick up the ball next spring, but Travis Stone adds to the microphone assortment at NYRA starting today. We'll talk to Travis in just a couple of minutes. A few things that came out during the week, and certainly the sales results, I think, deserve a quick mention. Monday night, always a glittering evening when it comes to the post-Breeders' Cup sell-off, and any number of top, typically females, will go through the ring as broodmare prospects, some cases racing. We've certainly think back to Royal Delta changing hands and others. Well, a number of horses that came through the ring on Monday to start the sales week at Fasig-Tipton. Just some big numbers that are very notable. Princess of Sylmar, of course, Ed Stanko's homebred. Just a magical couple of years for the very affable Stanko. The mare became the filly. She's still a filly as a 4-year-old, but she became very popular. Didn't have as big a 4-year-old year as they would have hoped, both Ed Stanko and Todd Pletcher. But she changes hands. Shade Farm, of course, that stood Sunday Silence, going to head to Japan, $3.1 million. And that was not the only success either for Stanko, because he also sold the mare Storm Dixie for $1.9 million. So $5 million for Ed Stanko for both Princess of Sylmar and her dam. Other big names, Sweet Lulu went for $3 million, and Wine Princess $3 million. There were a total of 23 hips that went for over $1 million. And one thing that was very notable out of this was certainly the amount of international trade. And that's been a story that seems like some people in the industry don't want you to believe. The drumbeat that the international community doesn't want our medication-laden horses. The reality is they buy our yearlings, they're buying the mares, they bring out sires and stand them around the world. So that whole mantra that international bloodstock isn't interested in North American horses, that's a lie. Any time you just look at the results, you see nothing but international players coming in and either bringing broodmares home or buying yearlings that they'll race, some cases here. Look at the success of Flaxman Holdings in the Breeders' Cup, or bring them to Europe and race them, or not just Europe, race them internationally. So I thought that was a big part of the week. Keeneland picked up the ball on Tuesday. Kind of a softish opening day for Book 1, but then Book 2 absolutely took off, and there were some enormous prices. Naples Bay goes for $3.6 million. The Giants Causeway mare that Coolmore picks up. The emergence of an international racing club, China Horse Club, that is campaigning a couple of horses in the U.S. with Christophe Clement. China Horse Club bought Ayatapa, and they very well may race her. Was kind of offered in this case as a broodmare prospect only, quote unquote, but apparently China Horse Club looking to race the Afleet Alex filly that was a good third in the distaff. $2.8 million for Ayatapa. Egg Drop, an old favorite of mine for Little Red Feather, $1.9 million. And what a story she is, and what an inspiration it is for people to want to get involved in the game, because Egg Drop was a $12,000 yearling purchase. She went on, became a Grade 1 winner, multiple graded stake winner. It's very encouraging. You know, on that topic too, how about Belle Galante that sold for close to $2 million? What, 1.3 actually, I think. Belle Galante on Monday claimed for $35,000 by Michael Dubb, and turns around, makes $850,000 this year on the racetrack, and sells for $750,000. So $1.6 million in earnings for a horse claimed for $35,000. Gives a lot of hope to those that play the bloodstock trade game or the claiming game. Show you how you can be successful. Speaking of claiming, I don't know if anybody noticed or if it came up last week. We were obviously immersed in Breeders' Cup the last 2 weeks, but you know, with the start of Aqueduct, and I'll bring this up with Dave Grenig, the start of that new claiming rule where if you have a horse that has been off 180 days, and you do the right thing by the horse, give it time, bring it back slowly. This is a rule that has gone into effect in about 5 years ago in California, a couple of years ago in Maryland, been met very happily with those that want to take their time with a horse. You can optional claim your horse, meaning after a 6-month layoff, if you want to run it in the right spot, which may be a claiming race, you can go in, but the horse is not eligible to be claimed. And that actually rewards patience and people doing the right thing with their horses. The Breeders' Cup numbers, handle was a little soft, just a little off, but attendance and TV ratings were strong. The carryover on Sunday at Santa Anita ended up providing a big boost to Santa Anita's business for the year. And that was a stunning number for people to bet another $5 million into a $1.3 million carryover after Breeders' Cup weekend. You figure people's bankrolls may be a little depleted, and obviously those that made money, they reinvested on Sunday, closing day at Santa Anita, with Del Mar having opened on Friday, and the Del Mar opening underway. Very good start to these first 2 days with this new November Del Mar meet, something they haven't done in 20 years. So we'll talk to Dave Grenig about some of those topics, as well as the announcement Friday that NYRA is going to start administering jockey health insurance. And this is an important story. Could actually probably bring this up with Rick Violette as well, because it's a step in the right direction as several different jurisdictions look to help the jocks in terms of their coverage. They can only get so much coverage from their existing guild support, and then there's what the racetracks provide. And this is a real positive that NYRA stepping up and many other jurisdictions stepping up to help, especially in light of some of the things we've seen here over the last several months. I mean, not the least of which the Juan Saez tragedy. Mike Luzzi, so badly injured last week when horse flipped and falls on him. Luz recovering from surgery for a shattered hip, and we wish him the best, of course. And then how about Kent DeSormo, kicked by the horse that had thrown him, and those kinds of injuries, as well as what happens on the racetrack, Rajiv Marat, et cetera, when guys are laid up for months on end, a serious issue. And the insurance coverage has been really a problem ever since the Guild found themselves in a financial pickle over basically being cheated by Dr. Wayne Gertmanian and the fallout from that situation. So there's the opening. Let's take a quick break here. When we come back, we'll talk to Travis Stone, whose first day broadcasting the races at NYRA starts later this afternoon as he subs for John Imbrial. Then Dave Grenig join us. Loose on the Lead, back after this.
I'm Brian Nadeau of HorsePlayerNow.com. Join me Friday, November 14th, here at the Clubhouse Racebook for a special happy hour bankroll. I'll be wagering $500 on behalf of 25 lucky patrons. So join me then, and let's win together.
Go Zephyr kicking clear, and Go Zephyr is pulling away impressively.
Hysterical Lady, Ginger Punch to win it.
And it's Wilco in front, and he's going to pull off a huge upset here.
But it's Round Pond going on to take the distaff.
Awesome again. Sire of 10 Grade 1 winners, 4 Breeders' Cup champions, and 4 multimillionaires, standing at Adena Springs.
It's more than just a sports bar. It's Stadium Cafe. Located at 389 Broadway in Saratoga, it's the place to be for great times and great food. Their menu features everything from gourmet entrees to your favorite wraps and sandwiches. Or maybe you just want to grab a beer and catch the game. So what can be better than that? How about 2 Stadium Cafes? There's also the Westside Stadium, right up the road at 112 Congress Street. Same great menu, same great service. Whether you're hanging at the bar or just relaxing outside on their spacious covered patio, you'll always leave knowing you'll be back again.
We love, above all, the staff. We love Dave Harmon, and the food is fantastic.
Not 1, but 2. 112 Congress Street, 389 Broadway. Guaranteed to be a home run.
Missed one of our TV shows? No worries. Now you can catch all your favorite programs online. Simply log on to CapitalOTV.com and click on the YouTube link at the bottom of the homepage. And look for our new podcast coming soon. CapitalOTV.com. Log on today.
Took away from the...
We're back, Loose on the Lead, on this Sunday morning, and it's a special Sunday morning, particularly for Travis Stone, who grew up, of course, north of the Capital District in Tupper Lake, and who has crafted an outstanding career already for himself up in the announcer's stand. You heard him this past weekend at the Breeders' Cup at Santa Anita, where he did the PA work behind Trevor Denman and Larry Comas, and he today launches his association with the New York Racing Association, and I know how important it is and how great it must feel to know that you will, in fact, be calling races at NYRA. Travis, good morning.
How are we doing, Steve? Good to talk to you. Hope everything's going well with you.
Going great, and of course, it was good to see you out at Santa Anita. Did a nice turn with Nick Tamero and with Pat Cummings with me on the radio. But the action at Santa Anita and all of that, as big as it is and as big a stage, something tells me that a Sunday at Aqueduct in November, that is even this is probably bigger for you personally than what happened last week.
Without a doubt, it's a good way to put it. It's just so exciting. I'm excited to be here. I'm honored at the opportunity, thankful for all the support over the years to get here. And it just shows you that if you really try and pursue and work hard at dreams that you have growing up, they can come true, not to be too corny or cheesy, but it is true. And this is just and I grew up watching Aqueduct throughout the winter. Even in college, I remember skipping class to catch the late daily double on a random Thursday or Friday. So this is just this is a really exciting day for me, no doubt.
Well, and we're happy for you. I can only imagine. You know, you've called how many races so far in your career?
I don't know the number. It's several thousand, though, if you factor in all the races down in Louisiana as well. So yeah, it's quite a bit. They pile up quickly.
Well, on that point, you'd have to think that even with all the thousands that you've called and moving up to Monmouth this past summer, that there's got to be a little butterfly action and a little bit of a nervous edge to this, just knowing that you've achieved something that you set out to do.
a nervous edge is how I'd put it. I've always been told that if you're not nervous, it shows that you don't care enough. And so any announcer, whenever they're starting at a new track or, a new meet rolls around, there's always some nerves because it means you care. It means you actually care about what you're doing. But I'd be lying to you if I said there was not a little extra bit of tension there just for what this all means personally and professionally as well. But hopefully we can survive it and get through it and roll on to race number 2 and have a good day, and we'll see how it goes.
Well, we're delighted for you. In addition to the subbing for John during the winter, what else are you going to be doing day in, day out?
Variety of projects from everything in simulcasting to their NYRA.com website and their web presence, NYRA Rewards, some TV graphical work, and sort of looking at the signal going forward. Just a wide variety of things, which is cool because, I love race calling and I always will. That'll always be my first passion, but I also love trying to improve the game and make it better and help it grow. And so this gives me a little bit of an opportunity to tap into both areas, which is exciting.
Well, Travis will be watching today, a carryover, going to be betting the 4th through the 9th today and listening to your calls first day behind the mic at Aqueduct, and best of luck. Always a pleasure and just happy as can be for you.
Steve, I appreciate it, and as always, appreciate the support, and good luck this afternoon.
Travis Stone, who adds New York to his list of racetrack race calling experience. And Dave Grenig, Travis, and I had to bring Travis on to wish him luck today, knowing, here's a kid that in his teens sat on the roof at Saratoga practicing the craft into a tape recorder.
Yeah, he'll do a fine job. It's a good hire for NYRA to have him back up Johnny in the wintertime.
Well, in the meantime, we got to talk about everything that went on last weekend. And before we talk about the winter ahead and even the fall that finished up at Belmont with the announcement yesterday and the specifics of the handle, give us your Breeders' Cup recap. What were you most taken with? And, of course, your classic Stewart decision version.
Well, unfortunately, the Classic and what happened there overshadowed everything else that sort of happened on the day. I co-hosted a show yesterday on Sirius with Dave Johnson, and basically the only race we talked about was Classic, and should he or shouldn't he have come down. I believe Byron should have been disqualified. I appreciate the fact that the stewards met with the press and talked and answered questions. I just didn't understand their reasoning or their logic or their interpretation of the rule. Did it cost the horses that were affected a chance at a better placing? Of course it did. How could you rule otherwise? And it didn't make any sense. So now it muddies the waters for the whole picture of 3-year-old champion, horse of the year, and it's something I'm glad I had some time to digest and look up. Main sequence, 4 for 4 in the United States, all Grade 1 victories. Terrific win in the Breeders' Cup turf. He'll definitely unseat Wise Van as turf champion, but he has to be mentioned as horse of the year. I know folks will put in Untappable, who was dynamite in the distaff on Friday. I have a little harder time putting her in the picture of horse of the year. I thought the 3-year-old filly division this year was extremely weak. She beat up on a very weak bunch, but she was very impressive, beating the older fillies in there. Some of them who unfortunately, like Close Hatches, were over the top, but she was very impressive, I think.
From the standpoint of some of the other runners and some of the other performers throughout the weekend, what else caught your eye? Certainly, it was a nice array of Eastern, Midwestern, and Western and European. Kara Kantai salvages things for the Euros. Toast of New York runs well in the Classic. Then you had Chad Brown with 3 wins, the 2 wins, and all board hits from Wesley Ward. I thought there were a lot of interesting storylines out there. And how about Work All Week, who was basically a blue-collar achiever in the sprint division all year?
Right, and one that you left out that I'll pick up is Texas Red. I mean, when you were watching the races on Friday, you were thinking, well, it's all speed. Saturday, you're thinking that, after Take Charge Brandy does what she did, pulling off an improbable victory, you're thinking, just find the speed horse and go on with it, and yet Texas Red blast and makes, maybe this is a little over dramatic, but an Arazi-type move to run by everybody, and did it with authority. And, everyone kind of discounted him a bit when all the California horses seemed to go by the wayside during the week with American Sparrow and Calculator, and he stayed for the home team with a dominant victory. I think he had, maybe if he was trained by somebody else, maybe he'd be getting a lot more publicity. But a dynamite performance there. Work all week. I mean, it's so that's what everyone on the backstretch who has a horse in the Breeders' Cup does. They work all week, and it's nice for those connections to get paid off with that victory. Chad Brown had been touting Lady Eli like Joe Namath touted the 69 Jets, and Lady Eli delivered just like the Jets. It was a very impressive performance, and one that I think if voters are willing to go outside the box, and they have shown that ability or tendency the last few years, I think you could see Lady Eli as the 2-year-old filly champion, which would really be first, I think, a 2-year-old filly to race exclusively on the turf to be champion.
And I'm certainly going to vote for her. I can't imagine that Angela Renee, after that dismal performance, is going to get any consideration other than for second and third place. I don't see how they denied Lady Eli. And I got to also mention that a New York bred looks poised to win the female turf crown. Day at the Spa, who got good and actually ran her best here at the end of her career. What an amazing turn of events for Peter Bradley, Steve Lehman, and Ron and Jerry Frankel. This mare just, couldn't have timed things better for her to, basically reach the upper echelon and run her best races in the last two starts of her career.
Right, and Chad Brown, who, as you mentioned, trained 3 winners, and including Bobby Skitton, who might have been the most visually impressive winner of the whole weekend, to be honest with you, the way he closed in the last 2.5 furlongs. But Day at the Spa, I talked to Chad earlier in the week about it, and what was his impetus to run her a mile and a quarter when she'd never run further than, I believe, a mile and an eighth, a mile and 16th. And he harkened back to about a decade ago when his mentor Bobby Frankel did the same exact thing, Intercontinental, when the first lady, it was called the Windstar Galaxy back then, and then decided, look, this is the last race of her career. She had never run beyond a mile and a 16th either. And he said, Frankel said, I'm going to just rolled the dice and ran her in the Breeders' Cup, filly mare turf at Belmont. She won it, and Chad Brown took the same exact tack with Day at the Spa that Bobby took with Intercontinental, and he was paid off handsomely for it. Stephanie Skitton ran Dynamite Race for Chad to run 1-2, and it's not out of the realm of possibility that these two come back. I know they were both sold, one of them was sold, one of them, I guess, $3.9 million isn't enough for Ramsey these days on Stephanie Skitton. But she's coming back, it looks like, and Day at the Spa was bought by those Stone Street. They'll never count them out as far as wanting to run one back. So it's pretty amazing if he's able to try and pull this off again next year.
Well, absolutely. And Dave, a great Breeders' Cup overall, despite what some people consider the unsatisfying conclusion. Monday through Sunday, there's a chance that any race can end up in the hands of the stewards. And no matter what happens, people are going to, a certain percentage are always going to be unhappy, no matter what the decisions are. So that is one of the things that you deal with when the gates open. We'll talk about Belmont and Aqueduct quickly, and you released the story with the Belmont handle numbers, which were down, and of course the weather was dreadful all September, October, a net of 39 less turf races run, and basically half a runner less in terms of average field size, and that took its toll.
It did. It was a bad meet. There's no way to sugarcoat it. Yes, weather did play a role in it. We lost a couple of Saturdays due to weather, but it just was a down meet. There was really no buzz at all. Meet, all 7 weeks long, which is a shame. But yeah, when you lose 47 turf races, it's going to take its toll on you, especially when you're carting 54% races for the turf. I don't think that bodes well for Aqueduct either. We've got off to a rough start with the weather as well. Another race off the turf today. The 5th is off. That turf course, you only have the luxury of one turf course at Aqueduct as opposed to 2 at Belmont. We'll see what happens with this fall meet as we get into the winter time. Be interested to see. I know there's a board meeting coming up Wednesday. Be interested to see if they present what kind of winter schedule they're going to run next, in the coming months, because I think it has to be some sort of reduced schedule. There's just not the horse population, and the quality is just dismal to continue this, 5 days a week, 9 races, 10 races. It's just got to change.
Well, and of course, with record stall requests down in South Florida, over 5,000 total, you got to figure that there's more horses even down in South Florida and even toward Tampa than usual. So we'll see how that bodes. Do we know, somebody asked a question on my website about the Monday experiment from last year and whether we may end up with a Thursday, Friday, Saturday, or a Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday, kind of a schedule again. They're going to try the Mondays?
No, the Mondays are out except for tomorrow.
Okay.
And December 15th, and those days were only brought up to make up for the fact that NYRA is adding a 5-day break, in a holiday break there that they didn't have penciled in. But I do believe that the Monday experiment will not be duplicated coming up. I think I talked to them at the board meeting last board meeting and mentioned that, and they said no, it's a Wednesday. There was really no difference, and there's just more activity at racetracks around the country on a Wednesday. The Gulfstream will be open on Wednesday, and you'd rather have those guys. If they don't like the race at Gulfstream, maybe they'll look in New York and bet that. So I think it will either be Wednesday through Sunday, or if they do to go to a 4-day week at some point in the winter, Thursday through Sunday. But I think you're done with Mondays except for the holidays and tomorrow, which isn't Veterans Day except at night.
Dave, finally, Rick Violette and then Terry Finley are going to join me here in the next half hour. Any thoughts from your end and any feel on the backstretch for this New York Thoroughbred Horsemen's Association election that seems to have created a bit of a kerfuffle?
Nice word, kerfuffle. I haven't really talked to too many people about it on the backstretch recently. I think it's this is a very important time for New York racing. I think the New York horsemen have gotten their voices heard a lot more over the recent past than maybe going back 10, 12, 15 years ago, and I think a lot of that could be attributed to Rick Violette. So I don't think you want to silence the horseman's voice at this point, and I'm not saying that with Terry in there it would be silent, but Rick made some headway here with over the course of several different administrations, just trying to get things done, and I think he's done a good job with that. I also think some of the national policies that are coming out are stuff that the New York horsemen, under Rick's leadership, have come up with beforehand. Some of this, about medications and limits, and were presented to the New York Racing and Wagering Board before it was Game Committee, and those guys just decided to sit on it until we hit the crisis point a couple of years ago with what happened last winter. So it's a tough time to just automatically change course when in a year from now somebody's going to recommend a whole different New York race, possibly a whole different New York racing landscape, and I think you'd want someone in there that has had that horseman's voice heard.
Well, and Rick is going to join us here momentarily. Dave Grenig, as always, appreciate it. We'll see you for Cigar Mile and Holiday Fest down toward Thanksgiving.
Can't wait. Thanksgiving Day at Aqueduct. Where else would you rather be?
Nowhere else. Absolutely. The Thanksgiving week place to be. Dave Grenig, everybody. DRF Grenig on Twitter and DRF Live, which if you aren't participating free at DRF Live, you're missing out on a lot of great feedback. We're going to stay right here because Rick Violette is on the line, I believe. Rick, good morning.
Good morning. How are you, Steve?
Outstanding. And first and foremost, congratulations on the third place finish by Upstart in the Breeders' Cup Juvenile. I want to start with racing, and certainly he ends his 2-year-old season very much poised as one of the top group in his class.
Yeah, thank you. We think so too. He's the real deal, and we'll give him a little bit of a freshener now and prepare for hopefully the big events next year.
We're watching the juvenile here, and everybody can see that he is outposted in the 13 hole, is going to lose a lot of ground around the first turn. Any regrets with the way in which the race was approached? Would you have rather seen him kind of tuck in earlier and save some ground around that turn?
I'll be honest with you, it's Monday morning quarterbacking. Every race up to then, you needed to turn for home to be 1-2 to be in the hunt. And there's no question, the speed duel, they went very fast up front, but it seemed that there wasn't even that much of a penalty for kind of flying high early. So it's easy to sit back and say, yeah, we could have just fallen out of the gate and made one run, but the way the racetrack was playing really both days, that didn't seem like the way to approach it. And because you're damned if you do, damned if you don't. We left the gate aggressively. Could he have waited a little longer? Again, on a normal racetrack, you would. The racetrack changed mid-afternoon, and there's just no question about it. Then it went back to, we get to the Classic, and they hardly changed positions other than tonalist. So, then we don't have walkie-talkies on the jocks, and it would have been nicer to be second, no question. And if we could have saved an inch somewhere, that would have been very helpful. The winner ran huge, and hats off to them. It's kind of like an Arazi-like performance. But we certainly belong in the hunt for at least having pleasant dreams for the next few months. Hopefully, anticipating running in the preps and maybe getting to the Derby.
And something like the Holy Bull as the first target.
Oh, there are no targets right now. I mean, we've got to decide if we want 2 or 3 races. We'll see. Sometimes when you let these horses down, you end up putting tack on earlier because it's just they need to do something.
Yep.
And sometimes all of a sudden some creeps up, and you need to give them a little bit more time. So we'll evaluate them for 2 or 3 weeks. There are a lot of preps out there: Florida, Arkansas, Louisiana, and here in New York, and there are great options. And I'm sure we'll handicap along the way too. I mean, if there are easier spots for the same amount of points and money, you kind of you have to take that into consideration as well.
Well, taking into consideration the scenario that pits you looking for a third term as the president of the New York Thoroughbred Horsemen's Association, and wanted to take some time this morning, Rick, with the opportunity and with ballots having gone out this past week. They are due back for December 1st. Let's talk a little bit about the progress and the achievements from your perspective. What has been the most successful and impactful portions of your tenure at the head of the NYTHA?
Well, I really, kind of being a little selfish, I think the list is pretty long and significant. I mean, we can start with, securing the VLT money. We were in the thick of that from day one. That's now $50 to $60 million per year, and there was a time where we were at 5.5% of that net drop that we battled very, very hard and got an additional 2% per year, which meant 15 to 16 million a year to bring us up to that $50 to $60 million number. We fought very hard for that in Albany a lot. Multiple phone calls when everything was caucusing. So we put real money in people's pockets. There's just and fought hard to do it. On the medication front, the Lasix is one issue, but it really started as a medication overhaul that was brought to the industry's attention after 8 Bells and Barbaro and the federal hearings. And the initial thing was, the anabolic steroids were quickly taken out of the industry. And there was a challenge to further protect the horses and riders by adjusting our medication policies, and we took that very seriously. New York especially was very much one of the spearheads in getting this national medication program launched. And, it includes, clenbuterol is essentially, instead of being a daily treatment for virtually every horse, it's out of the industry unless you're treating a sick horse, which it was intended for. The corticosteroids are further away from Performance Day. Depo-Medrol, maybe the most aggressive of those corticosteroids, is you can't give it closer than 15 days, and even that you do that with a little bit of a warning that sometimes there are outliers that it's there longer than the 15 days. And even the anti-inflammatories, butins and banamines, those levels have been lowered that are acceptable, and the time frame is further away from race day. There are a number of states that are fully on board with this. There are others, even in New York, we still have to cross our T's and dot our I's to get it in stone in New York, and there are a couple of public hearings coming up to get that done. but across the country, there's about 88% of the jurisdictions of the national handle. Those jurisdictions are represented having committed to this medication program. So, a lot of times there's an attempt to marginalize this. I think it's a groundswell of improvement, making the sport safer for our participants. And it gets marginalized because it doesn't include LASIX. And we've tried not to let that, deter us. There are some states, Louisiana and Florida, have been a tough pull because of their local state politics. But we've also included in this medication program, accreditation of laboratories, so that the laboratories doing the testing are, it's not an erector set in somebody's backyard, that they have to have substantial qualifications, they have to meet the standards set by the industry, and that the call levels and that procedures will be the same from East Coast to West Coast. And then also attached to that is the multiple violations penalties, that people who continually break our rules will get added penalties, more days, larger fines, until they penalize themselves also out of the industry. I think there's been absolutely pivotal change on the policing in the industry. There are places that need a kick in the butt to keep going, and we're trying to do that. And there are people there are states that are all there, which is terrific. But it is certainly a different planet as far as racing goes than it was 3 and 5 years ago.
Rick,
sure.
Let me jump in and mention that as part of I suppose this discussion and what amounts to the back and forth and the various politicking that goes on with this. These years since you've been involved, you've had to more or less negotiate and navigate through what was inarguably the most difficult period in the history of the New York Racing Association, and things like. You talk about the VLT money, but I also recall when there was a moment that the emergency purse funds were almost co-opted by the association, and we talked about that at the time.
You're right. There was a trap door. NYRA was going through their bankruptcy, and purse money is as it gets accumulated, the racetrack, this being NYRA, is the custodian. It's never their money at any point, but it isn't anybody else's money until it's won on the racetrack. So there was $25 million of that purse money literally in limbo, and NYRA had to sue NYRA and basically the bankruptcy court to give us a position to protect that money. And if that wasn't done, it was going to evaporate. It was going to get absorbed within the bankruptcy process, and it was very complicated, and a lot of it over my head. We had to hire substantial attorneys to go ahead and protect it. But frankly, even NYRA at the time, when we finally kind of came to terms in the last 24 hours before a pivotal meeting with the bankruptcy judge, and they realized that this money was in jeopardy, and it basically penalized them, because even if they got going through the bankruptcy, if that $25 million disappeared, they had no purse money to pay out. Yeah. So when that light bulb went on, things ended up going pretty smoothly, but it took a while. So yeah, that was actually, it seems like ancient history, but it really wasn't that long ago.
Rick, a couple of points, too, as we get into what the future can hold. Of course, the institution a couple of years ago of the Take Two, the aftercare program, and some of those things have happened as well under your watch. One of the topics that is a hot button, certainly it seems in this discussion, some people have couched this election as a LASIX debate, but really a much bigger issue to owners and to trainers and their business is the workman's compensation overkill and the cost of doing business in New York. And I know that that's been really a plank in the discussion that you'd like focused on. How can we all benefit as owners and horse players and as conditioners offset these costs and bring them in line?
Right. Well, I think it was the front page of our newsletter almost a year ago, where basically we announced that there was a workers' comp crisis in the making. Last year, and coming basically affecting this year's rates, the class code, which covers jockeys, exercise riders, grooms, everybody that works on the backside, went from 13.31, I believe, or 39 to 19.98, so almost 20%. So it increased by a full third, or more. It's like 46%, I believe. What that number is, I don't have it in front of me. So without taking into any experience involved, just the flat numbers, your insurance, that's how much your insurance was going to go up. Also included in it was the ability for the insurance companies and our insurance company, the New York State Fund, to charge a 10 to 20% assessment on top of those class code increases. So just doing basic arithmetic, there was an avalanche of additional charges coming into the industry, and probably anywhere from increasing workers' comp costs from 50 to doubling or 100%. So we've been looking at this, and it seems like a long time. And if it was an easy fix, it would have been done already. We've unfortunately followed a couple of empty wagons along the way, and things that just didn't work out. That either weren't legal or weren't accomplishable in New York State, and states have different workers' comp codes and regulations. And right now, we are in the process of forming a captive, and it's a process. It takes a lot longer than you would like, but we're about to issue, I'm hoping within the next month, a request for proposal. We already have serious interest from major brokers, from Lofton, from Marsh, and I think it's R.J. Reynolds that could get the initial backed up there, that are interested. And it's basically a self-insurance program where we would need some upfront money held as collateral, but covering just the backstretch employees, absent the exercise riders and the jockeys. We could see saving 30 to 40% in the initial years, and that could actually grow depending on how careful we are, how lucky we are, how safe we are on the racetrack. We've been going through the last couple of months gathering loss run information and payroll information from the trainers on the backside, those who will cooperate, and to try to establish a universe for these insurance companies so they can evaluate what they're getting themselves into, and they can look back 5 years and see what the frequency and the severity of injuries are, so they can come up with a legitimate bid. And it'll probably be a two-part quoting. One, be finalists, and whoever can build the best mousetrap for us and save us money in the short and long term will win out. Like I said, we're getting there. We do have Lofton is a serious player with the backing of Berkshire Hathaway, and looking at both local and national involvement in workers' comp. So we've looked at other avenues, and they've kind of just fallen by the wayside. Either the company, their ratings were not adequate to support the industry, and it's not easy. I mean, in California, they do it, but they raised the takeout a half a point to gain, I think it was like $6.5 million to help pay for the workers' comp out there. I wouldn't have to worry about an election. I'd be shot if we raised the takeout here a half a point to pay for our workers' comp. It's just a bad business proposal and bad business model. This is an aggressive plan. It doesn't happen overnight, and we'll have to get legislation passed to support it, because it'll be an all-inclusive plan, and everybody is. But right now, it looks like that is the best case available where we might be able to control our own fate to some level.
Well, it would be a godsend for horsemen and for owners because it's the one thing you hear so often: the paperwork issues and the financial burden and the difficulty. Not to mention when people want to come in to New York, it's been an area of consternation. We're going to pull up here, Rick, but this conversation will continue over the next couple of weeks before the December 1st deadline. As always, appreciate the visit.
Thank you very much, Steve. Have a great day.
Rick Violette, and we're going to stay right here because Terry Finley waiting in the wings, and we'll talk to Terry, much like we did with Rick, and congratulate him, first and foremost, on a same thing, a Breeders' Cup third-place finish. That was with Twilight Agenda in the turf. And then, of course, yesterday, toasting master Terry looks like a very nice 2-year-old colt by Congrats, an impressive winner at Churchill yesterday.
Yes, Steve. Hey, thanks so much. I appreciate the opportunity to jump on a beautiful Sunday morning. And, yeah, it's always good to have a Saturday afternoon horse. And we've liked this horse since we bought him at the 2-year-old sales. And we think he's going to be a very legitimate horse in 2015.
Well, and this was 6.5 furlongs. Second start, he had debuted back in the September meet at Churchill, was a good second there, and took a little bit of time. Dale Romans, of course, with him out there. Dale off to a tremendous start at this meet. In fact, Dale's had a good fall overall everywhere. And the way he did this, up in front under my man Miguel Mena, and draws off, wins by 4. What's next for him?
Well, obviously we're a little too close to that stake at the end of the meet, so we'll go to Florida. He's a Florida bred, but, oftentimes you look at the calendar and you say, boy, that was a good thing that we got pushed back a couple of weeks because we didn't get sucked into running in the deeper waters. So we'll go to Florida and we'll kind of catch our breath. And, as we all know, it's very exciting to be in a position where you got a good 3-year-old colt at the beginning of the year. We all know that.
Well, also nice to have a 5-year-old gelding like the Purim Sun Twilight Eclipse. I think I called him Agenda before. Twilight Eclipse, Terry, he doesn't win often, but he always gives a good account of himself, and he busts through over $1 million in earnings with the third-place finish, and a good third in that turf last Saturday.
Yeah, I thought he'd show up, and he did. And I said to a couple of people, Steve, he was third best, and he finished third. So, he's probably, I think if you look at it in aggregate, he's about 6 lengths away from being in a position where he had made like $5 million. He's gotten beat 4 straight times by the winner of the Breeders' Cup, and I wish he would have stayed in Europe. I wish he would have gone somewhere else because he's just been, every time we turn for home, and I said, man, we got a shot to win a Grade 1, and I see that son of a gun come running up. But you know what? He's a nice horse, and I think he has a legitimate shot to be Horse of the Year. And if he doesn't, he'll be right in the running. So I know Graham Motion is a little biased, but he thinks he should be the Horse of the Year, and I can't argue with him. I think he has a valid point.
Well, and of course, they're talking about the Flaxman Holding runner Main Sequence, who certainly came to the United States, and with the addition of Lasix, has been particularly terrific this year with these 4 straight Grade 1s. I say that with a smile in my voice. Terry, let's shift gears and talk about this New York Thoroughbred Horsemen's Association election. And Rick came on and he talked about some of the things that the association has dealt with during his tenure. Talk about why you were interested in making a run for this position and what you think you can bring to the table for owners and trainers and the entire community.
Yeah, I thought that was a pretty big smile in your voice. I sensed it right away.
Well, that was like a skeet shot.
I tell you what, you hit that right on the mark. But listen, here's what as Rick is. I'm all in, right? I just turned 50. This is how I've made my living. So I really think I can make a difference. as a lot of people do, and a lot of people have made a difference in the business. So, look, I know politics is politics, and I know we both would love to run the organization. In the middle of the summer, when I evaluated the prospect of running for president, I said, what can I do differently? And I came up with several things that I thought we could change and make some progress in the organization. And it's been really fascinating, for one, to learn more about the issues and to kind of get a little bit more into what really is relevant to the horsemen of New York. Now, I say that with a smile on my face because New York is the position of president of the New York Thoroughbred Horsemen. You represent the horsemen in New York. You don't represent the horsemen, across the Mid-Atlantic. Now, that being said, I understand that the horsemen in New York really need to lead the way, and they need to be on the pulpit of the horsemen across the country. But that's a nuance there that I think is important for any president, and I'd hope we get a shot to talk about the absolutely insane interference that we've had with the other states in this election. But that being said, I think I can make a difference. I think I can bring energy and passion and the leadership that we really need to make progress in the organization. Now, I know that's kind of a big picture, but I really think that I can make a difference, and especially with the team of people who are running on the board, I think whether I get in or not, there's going to be a new culture and a new group of people that are going to start asking the questions. Tell me about this now. Why do we do, and then fill in the blank? And I think that's so important for any organization to get better and to progress into the future. It's just my take.
Terry, a couple of things that you've kind of keyed in on, and one of the things that you've brought up, and it's an area that, from my perspective, is not just a New York issue, but a national issue, and that is influence. I don't want to call it influence peddling or buying votes or that kind of a thing, but you've brought up particularly the area of influence in Albany and having a presence, a better presence in New York. What's practical in terms of that approach? How can we do a better job as an industry to make our case and to have frankly a more beneficial and I would say receptive audience when it comes to what feels like animosity from particularly the governor's office and certain quarters, certainly editorial writers that are constantly belittling the value of the sport and the industry in New York. Talk a little bit to that end.
Well, it's very simple. We all know what drives politics, right? It's the system we live in, and not just in Albany, but in the United States of America. And money drives politics. Right? You can't buy votes in the legislature, right? But you can buy access, and we all know that when you spread around your funds, in particular your PAC funds, that you start to gain some footing. And I've been on the NTRA PAC for over 10 years, and look, we're not the strongest in D.C. We raise about $400,000 a year, which I think should be much more. But the point being that we have the ability to write checks out to congressmen and to senators in D.C. And we don't always just go after the big time guys. It's a strategy. It's a 10 to 20 year strategy. We need to identify the people who are into politics or in Albany that are younger, that we think and that have identified themselves as really having a chance to be influential in 10 years when things are going to be totally different in the state and in the racing industry. So the bottom line is NYSA has raised on average $18,000 and that's gross. I don't know. I haven't been able to get to the bottom. I haven't seen any financials, but $18,000 gross a year on average for a lot of years. So we can talk about, and Rick and the management team can talk about really having a voice in Albany, and maybe they have. Look, if he's a good man, and we have a lot of people involved in the business that are influential in the business world overall. My point is that if we put the resources and emphasis on our PAC fund, and we get people to write checks out to the NT or NYTHA PAC, we should go to Albany each year with several $100,000. And my point is, we're going to have a lot bigger voice, right? Like the politicians in Albany, like we need to be special up there. We need to sort ourselves out from all the other special interests, because we are a special interest, right? All the other special interests that are vying for the time, talent, and treasure of the state. Well, we need to do the same thing, and it's just not plausible to say that our voice is strong enough when we go up there with $18,000 a year. Now, as a case in point, as a point of comparison, the company that owns the slot company at Aqueduct, they invest and spend $100,000 a month in Albany. I think you would agree with me, Steve, that they're in a better position. I'm not saying we'd ever get to the point where we'd spend $100,000, but we need to do better, and that everything is tied in to that voice in Albany, and right, because there's no other jurisdiction in the country that is more politicized, right, than NYRA.
Yeah, that's certainly true. Certainly true. Terry, let me get one more question in too, because it's become probably the focal point. At least people seem to think it's the focal point, and that is some of the medication discussion. And you've been painted as a guy that is in the anti-Lasix camp. If you could, and if you're in the position to do so, can you give a definitive posture to where you stand on this? Because certainly from the Thoroughbred Daily News Q&A, it's not clear when you were asked what your medication policy or preferences are.
Well, sure I can. So, and I appreciate the opportunity. Look, I'm not anti-Lasix. I totally understand that horses in some jurisdictions, especially older horses, right, need Lasix or need help from a bleeding standpoint. Now, I would not be in favor of abolishing Lasix overall. Now, the question and where we get into the devil's in the, it's not the abortion issue, whether you're for or against. Everybody knows that when you sit down and think about it, that's not the case with the Lasix issue. So, I've talked to trainers all over the country. Talked to Baffert, talked to Dale Romans, talked to Bill Mott, talked to Todd Fletcher, talked to Chad Brown, talked to a lot of the other smaller guys that don't have the power of those guys. And the resounding theme is, what are some options? How do we get to a middle ground? And can we look at, say, in the case of what I talked about in the TDN article, can we take a look at, say, our 2-year-olds? And Jerry Brown, a very well-respected handicapper, actually threw out a proposal and an idea this summer that I was very intrigued with, and a lot of trainers are intrigued with. And as a matter of fact, right, somebody I talked to Linda Rice the other day, right, she's on the NYTHA board right now. She is in accord with me about looking at the 2-year-olds and not running Lasix with 2-year-olds, right? Now, I'm not even sure that would be prudent, but could we give owners and trainers an opportunity so that if they wanted to run on Lasix, they carried 5 more pounds? Anybody that says that's not an intriguing idea that is worth any dialogue, I think is probably in the extreme. So I'd ask anybody, look, I brought a body of work, right, in my career. I think I've put my heart and soul into the business. I'm sure you can understand. It is frustrating to a certain extent to be painted as anti-LASIK. I'm not anti-LASIK, but I am in favor of dialogue and some progress and trying to get to the middle ground. Because you and I both know, and everybody else that I talk to, when you look them in the eye, LASIK is not really the issue. It's the out-of-competition testing. And what has been a problem, and Dale Romans and I talked about this at length yesterday, we both agree that it's really about out-of-competition testing that's going to give us a true level playing field. It's not about LASIK. You and I both know that. So, look, we're both trying to win the election. I think it's been very unfair what they've done with the THA and really bringing the full force to the THA. But that's okay. If I get beat, we still have issues on the table that I think some very hard questions are going to be asked, especially by the board members who are coming in. So that's my take on LASIK. It's just not that big of a deal. There are plenty of other bigger issues, more important issues in today's industry. I was at Belmont on the rail just now. They want workers' comp. They want the crisis solved.
Yep.
And it's been a long time. So I'm not shifting. I'm not pivoting. If you have questions on the LASIK issue, I'd be happy to address it.
No,
but the real issue on the backsides and what is pushing our day rates up is workers' comp. And workers' comp has been there for a long time. Now, all of a sudden, we have what's called an RFP is in the pipeline. Well, shoot, we've had 8 years. Like, okay, I know we're in election year, but we got to get things done. And it goes back to if we had a stronger voice and we had more friends in Albany, we would be in a better spot on the workers' comp issue. That's it.
Well, Terry, what we're going to do, we're going to continue the dialogue, and of course, with each Sunday, Seth and I have the opportunity to have you and Rick voice, I think, some of your concerns and some of the things that you hope to bring forward. So we'll continue that. Also expect to have you both visit me on the radio as well. But we wanted to...
Two questions.
Sure.
Actually, two questions. I didn't hear Rick. Now, did he get about 15 minutes, or did he get longer?
Actually, it looks like you got more.
Okay. So the other thing is, as I've said to everybody, right? It's very unfair to be in a position where you have the full force of the THA interfering in a NYSEG, especially when you send out a fraudulent letter like they did. But I've asked Rick in a number of places for a public debate, so we can talk about these issues, and we don't have a situation where you get other minions around the Atlantic. So let me ask you. I'll say it again. Rick needs to debate Terry Finley in an open forum so that we can put these things out, so that the voters can hear our differences and where we agree. It's just not right, and you know, and I know that when you don't have anything to hide, and when you want to make a stand, you want to really represent the people and the horsemen of New York, you come up front, you go on the airwaves, and you debate. That's really my strong feeling.
I'll work on that as we've discussed, and at the very least, we can have a point counterpoint, as it were. The number one issue here is for all of us as stakeholders, particularly in New York, to be in a position of relative strength as best we can over what is now going to be yet another invocation or incantation of the franchise, as if we weren't put through enough turmoil 5 years ago, and I'm not going to go launching into that area, but the most important thing is that everybody's pulling in the same direction ultimately, because there's no doubt there is legitimate concern for the financial underpinnings that we waited 10 years for when it comes to the VLT money at Aqueduct. And based on the way Albany postures, it seems that is really under siege, and that there's every intention of Albany to try to strip that. And that should be the focal point, is where we are and where we're going to be as owners and breeders and horsemen in this state. And from that standpoint, a lot of the other stuff is extraneous when it comes to...
I couldn't agree more, Steve. I couldn't agree more. So our charisma and our good looks, they only go so far in Albany. You know and I know what drives Albany. It's money, money. And we've raised $18,000. It's absolutely incredible that other people in the other horsemen that have not had their interests really aligned in Albany haven't stood up and said enough's enough. We're going to raise money. I'll raise money, and the team will raise money, and we'll be a bigger influence. And that's what people should take away. We're going to bring new energy and passion and results.
Well, it's certainly
the organization through Albany.
It's been a difficult, these 10 years, these 8-10 years have been as difficult. A lot of horsemen and particularly a lot of breeders were waiting for things. They hung on by the skin of their teeth if they were lucky, and what should be a period of absolute success and growth in the state was stunted already once, and that really to me is really the discussion point that is most important. And I think that the people that will vote in this thing for December 1st, we all want, we've got mayors here up at up in Fort Edward, and my interest is that the decisions we're making now are based on certain expectations, and that to me is the kind of thing, and those are the issues that a lot of owners and breeders and New York stakeholders are concerned for, and that's one of the reasons I brought up the money issue with you. We'll keep this conversation going. Rick and Terry Finley, I appreciate it as always, and we'll talk more in coming weeks. There we go. Oh, thanks, Terry. Are we losing him? All right. Well, we got to pull up anyway. I appreciate the network giving us the extra 10 minutes this morning. You can reach us, looseonthelead@yahoo.com. There's also, of course, the Facebook page to visit. And I've got Twitter. Seth doesn't. Hopefully, Seth is back with us next Sunday. We'll have more of these visits, I think, with Finley and with Violette, because it's too important going forward. Have a great Sunday. We'll check for the changes and look at this Pick 6 carryover today at Aqueduct. There's also a big $80,000 carryover at Del Mar for the third day of their new November meet. Join me on the radio tomorrow morning, 9 a.m. at the races, Sirius XM. Thanks, everybody. Have a great Sunday.
You're watching OTB TV, a service of Capital Off-Track Betting.